Hello and welcome to the Creative Writing Podcast. You'll need a pen and paper or the notes app on your phone. The first few minutes will be a writing warm up, and then I'll talk a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing today, why it's interesting for writers, and we'll get to the main writing session. Usually, my podcasts have some kind of title or theme. Today's episode is very focused on an element of craft of writing that's applicable to all sorts of situations. And I haven't quite got a title for it yet, I will admit, but I think it's going to be something like active characters making decisions. Um, and I'm sure you'll have seen that when you click through whether I agreed with myself that that should be it or not. During the writing exercises, I'll talk about every 2 to 5 minutes, and that gives you a chance to concentrate in between. The quiet moments are an invitation to you to put words down on the page. That is the process of being a writer, becoming a writer. We can't do anything without words down on the page. If we don't have those, then we're a daydreamer, which, of course, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So towards the end of the main writing session, I'll give you an opportunity as well just to press pause, and you can write for much, much longer if you want. The idea of how I structure these workshops is that for the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to take responsibility for time and give you some hint about what you're going to write, and the that frees up your mind to concentrate just on getting those words down on paper. At the end, of course, as always, I will invite you to reflect on your writing. Let's dive in with a warm up. So, a character is going to be stuck. I'm going to give you two options for how they are stuck. They are locked in a cafe bathroom, or they've trapped their sleeve in a door in a public place. So I'm inviting you to write about them either in public, so there's an element of humiliation potentially that comes with this being stuck, or in private, but with the possibility of screaming their heads off for help and rescue and people coming to their aid. And which one you're in the mood for is entirely up to you. Cafe bathroom or trapped their sleeve in a door in a public place. Just a reminder that with a warm up, you're just trying to get a sense of momentum. You don't want to be tripping over your own brain all the time. So, momentum writing, where you just keep going and don't overthink it, and it just preps your mind for sort of more considered craft writing when we get to the main exercise. Before starting, you can choose whether you're going to write in the first person or the third person, or if you're feeling super contrarian and you know what you're doing, the second person. Easiest might be first. I had my sleeve trapped in the door. I'll give you about 6 to 8 minutes. Not very long, doesn't matter, low stakes, write whatever you like. Off we go. And if that was fun to kick off and you're settling into it, then you can ignore this prompt. But if you need a refocus, if you began with a character panicking about being stuck, maybe try and calm them down. Let them have a more methodical, considered approach to their situation. If you began with a very calm character who was thinking things through, maybe let them panic. And again, if you found some focus, then ignore me. If not, then let's choose one of the five senses, possibly one that you haven't experimented with yet in this piece, and have your character become a bit obsessed by the experience of that sense. So something they can hear, see, which could be, a blinding light or something very difficult to see, something coming towards them and they can't escape, something they can taste or smell or touch. And if this has really taken off for you, then you could hit pause right here and have a couple more minutes with it. If you're going to finish with me, then let's find a place that we can draw it to a close. That might be the end of a sentence. You might be writing down two keywords of things that have made it into your brain but have not yet made it down onto the page. It might be the end of an exchange of dialogue or a coherent thought that your character is having, but we'll try and bring it to a close. And from the idea of a character being stuck, we'll move on to consider the question of today's session, which is all about active characters who make decisions. So we want to explore autonomy and the idea of making a decision and sticking with it. A character faced with a decision, making a decision, or working through the consequences of a decision, these are some of the building blocks of all fiction and drama. And they're far from the only ones, but they are core to all stories. Very few stories, for instance, would have no character making, no decisions of any kind whatsoever. The aim of this session is really to give you a place to play and experiment with this core concept. And maybe what will come out of today's session is a phrase or an argument that you want to transpose into a different setting, especially if you have unformed ideas swimming around in your brain, which writers usually do. You might end this thinking, oh, of course, this is the argument they have in the car, or this is what they're going to talk about when they're stuck in the dragon's lair. Or what you might get from today is that it's prep that never appears in a story, but it allows you to understand some characters you want to work with for a long time in a lot more detail. It's very craft focused. A lot of my sessions are aimed at, giving you the inspiration and a jumping off point to explore something with your own imagination. This one, I think you're less likely to get a kind of real short story or the spark of a novel. It's much more about your craft development, and you'll learn something that you'll be able to apply in lots of different situations. Just before we begin, I'd like you to recognize that you might put a lot of yourself into this. So let's do a little bit of self-reflection. You can write the answers to this down in your notebook if you like. Do you find it difficult to make decisions? No shade if you do or don't. Do you worry or get anxious? Again, a little bit of anxiety can be a good thing, helps us come to the right conclusion. Are you bold? Are you decisive? In fact, do you go all the way to becoming impulsive? It's kind of a bit of a curve. Because we can get stuck in our own worldview, today we're going to write two characters with opposing instincts. The aim is that one of them might feel very natural for you to write because they reflect how you would go about making a decision, and some of your own sort of natural, you might reach for, things are frightening, so therefore think them through carefully, or, it will just get in your way, leap first and look afterwards. So the aim is that for the other character, you will have to step outside yourself and write someone who doesn't follow your own natural instincts. And just a heads up, you might want to do this session twice and repeat it from different characters' point of view, focusing in on different characters. So we're going to invent two people. One is bold and decisive, and one is plagued by doubt. So let's give your bold and decisive character a name and an age. And these two characters have known each other for a long time. So let's define their relationship. Are they friends or colleagues? Are they married? Perhaps they're siblings. And now we'll give your doubtful character a name and an age. And these might be characters that you know you want to work on in other work in progress, or they might be just for the purposes of this exercise. These two people have a complex relationship. It's not quite love-hate, but it certainly has some irritations in there because they've known each other for a long time, and I think that's true of all enduring relationships. When they have petty arguments, and I'm guessing they don't have huge ones, But when they have smaller ones, which of them usually wins an argument? It might actually be your doubtful character, or it might be your bold and decisive character. It's up to you. This is just us preparing. So for each of them, we're going to decide what they are currently preoccupied with that they have not told the other character about. This is all prep for your writing. So if you might be itching to get going, just stay with the notes for a second. They're each preoccupied with something that they have not told the other character. It might be something like a job interview. They might be considering moving home. Perhaps they're falling in love. Maybe they're bidding on an auction site and they really want to win this vintage board game or piece of costume jewellery. Maybe they're embarrassed about something that's happened to them or something they said in another context. They're sort of carrying it around with them. Maybe they're worried about the big picture politics and the state of the world and the big existential questions. So each of your characters has something going on in the background, buzzing away, that's putting them under a bit of pressure. And once we've added that to our notes, we'll move on to the next question, which is, what does each of them blame the other for? It might be something like, you made me dump my teenage girlfriend. I should have stayed with her. You talked me out of going for promotion because you thought it would make me too busy, but now I'm thwarted and unhappy and I should have gone for it. It might be a little bit sort of mystical thinking or magical thinking. I could have been an astronaut, gone to the magic university, run away to sea. That kind of thwarted opportunity that you can blame somebody else for. Maybe it's more simple and immediate and everyday, like you owe me money. I'm sure you'll have had many ideas that are much, much better than that. But we want to note down before we head into the writing an exchange between the two of them what they blame each other for. And just to kind of flag now, this may come out in your writing today or it may not. It may just be the hidden meaning behind what they say. In a final piece of writing, you would need that hidden meaning to be accessible to the reader in some form or another, but in this writing exercise, you're not going to. So let's begin writing with this very simple idea. These two people that you have just been taking notes on have been walking the same road for a really long time. So when we meet them in this scene, they are pacing, they might already be a bit tired. And they're not talking about any of this big stuff at the moment. They can be talking about whatever you want, or they can be walking in sort of companionable quiet. Where they are going and how quickly they need to be there and how much pressure they're under is completely up to you. I would suggest it might be something you find in the writing exercise. So we can begin with them walking. Remember, if you're writing in first person, you're going to choose one of these characters and you're going to be very firmly inside their head and not jump into the other person's head. So we're either going to restrict ourselves to one first person perspective. We might be in close third. So we're still saying he did this, she walked over to the edge of the road. That works as well. So even though you've invented both these characters just now, and you love them both equally, if you want to choose a perspective, then of course you can. So let's just kick off with them walking along the road. They've been going for a while. They've known each other for a really long time. And you can spend some time a little bit on the setting and the kind of road it is and where it is. That's completely up to you. And now, hopefully, you've established two people walking along this road. They're going to arrive at a crossroads. Your bold character wants to change direction, and of course, your timid or more doubtful character wants to continue the same way. And I'll jump in with another prompt in just 2 minutes' time, but they're just going to get to this crossroads and realize that they both want different things. So your two characters are stuck now in a little bit of a stalemate. One of them wants to change direction, the other one wants to continue. And into this air of conflict and disagreement, you're going to drop, like a bombshell, the word always. This is a word which can reveal that old wounds and resentments are bubbling up near the surface. You're always like this. You always do this. Why do you always? When people use this kind of language in real life, it can be a bombshell. It can feel very sudden, very accusatory. So don't worry too much if it jars in your writing, if it seems to come from nowhere. It always does in life as well. These old wounds and resentments and blame, they might not be totally visible yet. You might not want to write on the nose about what one character has always blamed the other for, but you're just going to let it drive more exasperation than would be needed for this disagreement about the direction that they're going in. So, whatever's going on, stop, cut across what you're doing. You're always like this. You always do this. Why do you always? And then just play it out from there. And now here is a prompt that may be useful for you or it may not be. If you're racing ahead at a million miles an hour, then definitely keep going because that's the best place to be as a writer. But if you want to, you could also pause, take a moment to reflect. Which character do you currently most sympathise with? Is it the one who naturally shares your worldview? So if you would say you are a more doubtful and considered, thoughtful, pensive person, is it the character that shares that worldview that you're finding easier to identify with? Or if you are more bold, potentially sometimes impulsive, is it that character who's drawing you to them? Could you do anything to strengthen the other person's argument? So, stepping out of your own natural instincts and into the instincts of your characters. Could you do, and if that's not the point of view character, that doesn't necessarily matter because they'll have to express that through dialogue and action. Could you do anything to strengthen the other person's argument if you have a one that you sympathize with? And now, your character who is usually timid, whether or not they have the point of view character, they begin to walk. They make the decision, they keep walking in the same direction. That's what they wanted all along. Your character is a bit more thoughtful. Your bold character watches them go. This decisiveness from your timid character is brand new. So it floors your bold character for a moment. They're rooted to the spot for a couple of minutes. Why is your character who sometimes experiences, you know, doubt and indecisiveness, why are they so sure of themselves this time? You might want to think about that question. And now your bold character, who spent the last couple of minutes watching your timid character walk away, they make a decision. They walk off in the direction they wanted to go in. So they've changed course. Your two characters have now separated. It's up to you which one you will now follow. If you've been writing in the first person, you may at this point want to jump perspective and follow the other character. It might feel a bit awkward in a piece for readers, but we're developing our writing skills, so it's fine here. We're just going to jump perspectives if that's where our heart takes us. For your bold character, or sorry, for the character that you're following, bold or timid, what is their internal monologue as they walk away? Do they expect that the other person will actually give in and join them? Are they happy to be alone? Perhaps they're experiencing a sense of relief. So you can just stick with one of your characters for the last couple of minutes of this exercise as they deal with the ramifications of this decision to walk away, whether they did so first or second. And now, if you find that this is taking off for you, you can press pause, keep going for as long as you want. If you're going to finish with me, then we'll find the end of a sentence. Maybe some keywords about what might happen next. The end of a train of thought, whether it's your train of thought as the writer or a character's train of thought. And then we'll bring it to a very deliberate, intentional stop. And we will pause and reflect about what we have just accomplished. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it fun and interesting. just a reminder then that what we have spent the last half an hour doing is creating two characters, putting them in a situation where we, the writers, knew some of the old blame and resentment and the important elements of the psychology within the relationship that might drive underneath a conflict or a decision. Ones that might never be truly visible to a reader, but that we know as a writer. We also brought these two characters in with different natural, instinctive traits. One to be very bold and decisive, one to be potentially a little bit more pensive and thoughtful and struggle to make decisions. Then what we did was took them to a place where they had to make a new decision. And this one was very simple. It was only about which direction to go in on the road. And obviously, within the context of your short story or novel, it might be a much, much more complex decision that's informed by all sorts of other external factors or plot. But at the heart of it, what we wanted to do was develop this craft of the idea of someone putting their foot down, making a decision, even if they are the person who normally lets things happen to them. And that is because in any piece of writing, longer piece of writing that we do for readers, we're going to usually have characters who make decisions. And what we wanted to do today was have a look at how those are informed by some of the pre-existing things bubbling under the surface, but then also writing that moment of decision. Ultimately, when you decide to continue on the path or turn off the path, there is a moment where your feet move and you begin to walk. In the same way, when you decide to do a piece of creative writing, all the thinking in the world is brilliant, but there is a moment when you pick up your pen. So hopefully that was a little bit of insight for you to develop this idea of active characters who make decisions. I think in your own reflection, it's really important to work out, was it easier to write a more passive, pensive character or one that is very bold and reckless? And it's an interesting thing to have a lot of self-knowledge about whether when you're in the flow of writing and you're dealing with all plot and setting and readers and introducing information and world building and holding things together, are you naturally going to have your character maybe make too many decisions too quickly? That might get difficult for a reader to follow. Or end up in passivity and have things happen to them, which is a little bit less satisfying, especially if you want to develop in a more commercial direction. Do remember, though, that a quiet character can be very decisive, and loud can be flighty and chaotic. Your characters can be a complex mix, and they can surprise people either with their inner resolve that wasn't apparent before or their lack of grit when it matters most. What some people show on the surface or what gets projected onto them by those around them isn't always who they are. And sometimes it takes a stark, decisive moment for their true character to reveal itself, both to the reader and to the other characters in your stories. For me, this session in particular is like a very exercisey exercise. I think you're less likely to get a story out of this. As I said before, I'm more likely to discover a nugget of gold that you want to include in a different piece. If you are working with characters that you already know and love and are developing, then perhaps you've learned something today about what will happen when they finally, plant their feet and make their decision and do what they're going to do regardless. This is a piece of writing that may not be that interesting to a reader, but it's more about developing your craft and your exercise as a writer. And I think it's really important to look back and reflect on what you've written through that lens. So ultimately, these two characters walking a road, you might think this is a little bit isolated and that makes it dull. That could well be true, but what you're looking for is what would be like exciting for a reader or interesting to experiment with if you lifted these characters out of this very empty, potentially landscape that I dropped them into and put them into more either a more realistic or heightened kind of situation. So when you're reading back, have a think about if there are any threads that you have revealed here that you would like to explore. But as always, I would strongly advise if you're reading back, put a star in the margin, draw around anything that you loved. It might be a great piece of dialogue. It might be the moment where somebody walks away. It might be a person standing there in shock that their sibling has abandoned them at the crossroads. And part of the reason for doing that, you'll know if you've listened to more than one of these episodes, is you really need to be developing a relationship with your notebook where when you go back through it, it can tell you, here are interesting, thoughtful things that I did before that I can do again. And that means that increasingly as you sit down and you're developing your writing practice, you're never sitting down with a blank notebook, because all you have to do is go back through writing that you've done before, and it's actually your own writing that becomes the jumping off point for your next piece. And that's how in the end you sort of develop out of writing prompts and classes and workshops and sessions, even though they're always really fun to come back to. So if you're an experienced writer who's just jumped into this today just for the hell of it, then I hope you had a fantastic time as well. I really enjoyed it. You can leave feedback on the Substack app. The comments should be open. I always love to know what you've done with the workshop, whether or not you found it useful. You are always free to put some of your writing there as well, but I kind of slightly encourage people not to, just because it's nice to keep this stuff to your heart and then, put it in fiction competitions. But all comments and feedback are completely welcome, and I will see you next time.